So my name is Sarah Orr, and I've been serving as the honorary chair of the 20th anniversary for Leadership Pasadena. And it's been my pleasure to serve in this role, to engage with current leaders of Leadership Pasadena, as well as those who are alums, who were part of the startup with me in 1997, 1999. We started the discussion in 1997. What we focused on today was community leadership. And the reason why I lifted the level not to get involved in issues, but really talk about what's the environment that we're in today as communities, and what is the kind of leadership that's necessary in order to lead the kind of change that is required to achieve economic, physical, social health within the community, and how we should engage all sectors of the community, but most importantly, each citizen, with citizen-to-citizen conversations. And conversations to begin with, not to tackle problems initially, but to have conversations so that we each understand each other and feel a level of trust that we can then move forward, perhaps in some joint and shared activities to deal with a particular issue that is in the community. So it's been my pleasure to serve in this role and to bring the panelists that are part of this video and program with their voices, with their expertise, as they looked at different questions that I put before them. What has changed in the last 20 years? What kind of leadership is required? What is Leadership Pasadena's role? And it definitely does have a role. So thank you for watching this, and I wish you the best of all things as you go citizen to citizen and lead to a better community in Pasadena.
We are honored and privileged to have you join us today to celebrate 20 years of Leadership Pasadena. Many of you in the room are the founders and the creators of Leadership Pasadena. Others have joined the Leadership Pasadena community over the years, and some of you may be brand new to Leadership Pasadena today, and we welcome each and every one of you. We want to start by thanking our sponsors that made this lunch possible. Our gold sponsors are the Southern California Gas Company and Huntington Hospital. Our table sponsors are the Sterling Group, the City of Pasadena, Morrison Burger, Pasadena Fire Department, Dr. Sarah Smith Orr, Nancy Baxter and Hillary Clark, Julie Gao, and Mick Hansen. Thank you for your investment in Leadership Pasadena and your commitment to the community. Okay. It is my honor now to introduce one of the founding board members of Leadership Pasadena, Deacon Manuel Valencia, to give the invocation. After Deacon Valencia gives the invitation, our Leadership Pasadena Board Chair, Josh Driscoll, will welcome you, and we'll have a few remarks from Mayor Turnick. After the mayor, please enjoy lunch, and we will begin our presentation promptly at 12:30. Thank you very much.
Being Catholic, I was going to lead everyone in a Hail Mary, but Sarah asked that I keep it fairly non-denominational, so here we go. We gather together today as community, as companions. We recall that the word companion has special meaning for us today. Companion, it comes from the Latin cum, meaning with, panis, meaning bread, with bread. We are here as companions who have come to break bread together in fellowship, in goodwill. We gather also to seek ways in which we may build community and leadership to serve the common good. We ask God to bless our efforts with insight and wisdom. And we ask that, Lord, you bless this meal, those who prepared it, and to bless us too, we, companions together, breaking bread. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Josh Driscoll, the chair of Leadership Pasadena. I'd like to thank a few people in the room. First, to our Luncheon chair, Sarah Smith Orr, and co-chairs Phil Hockey and Deb Rapp. Thank you. Without them, today would not be possible. And also our management consultant, Cindy Bingston, who I know has probably had a personal hand in getting everybody in this room in their seats today. So thank you, Cindy. Also, thank you to Althea Castor, the Executive Director of the Caltech Y, and the Board of the Caltech Y for partnering with us to celebrate today. But our honorary committee is more than just responsible for the luncheon that you're enjoying. Almost everyone on the honorary committee was a leader in creating and launching Leadership Pasadena in 1999. These are all individuals that brought Leadership Pasadena to life, and I would like each person to stand as I read their name, and as we go through that. Greg Apodaca, Nancy Baxter, Dr. Althea Castro, Ken Chalkins, Tom Costin, Dr. Gerda Govine, Mick Hansen, Cynthia Kurtz, Steve Ralph, Dr. Phlunte Riddle, Hunt Salambier, Manuel Valencia, Bill Bogard, Ibrahim Nahim. Thank you. And I would also now like to acknowledge all those who stand on the shoulders of these giants. Would all past and present board member and advisory council members of Leadership Pasadena please stand? Thank you. Would all Leadership Pasadena alums and our two program facilitators please also stand? Wow, quite a group. Thank you. And I'd also like to, at this point, acknowledge my two co-vice chairs, Mary Spellman and Carla Buigas, who have been doing a great job running the program with us this year. Thank you all for donating your time, your resources, your talent, and your energy to bring Leadership Pasadena to its 20th anniversary. This time, I'd like to introduce Pasadena's mayor, Mayor Turnick, to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This is such a... Did anyone not stand up yet? A lot of you have heard me talk about nonprofits and the role they play in Pasadena. This week, I had the opportunity to do two talk radio shows that were both on the issue of homelessness, which is top of mind for a lot of us these days. And the point that I was trying to convey was that while the city was certainly doing its part in terms of trying to deal with that crisis, that really without the intervention, participation, and cooperation of nonprofits, we could not make the kind of progress that I think we are making. And that's not unique to that particular problem. The other issue that I'm struck by, just because of some of the events I've been attending, and you know, unfortunately, my predecessor, Mr. Bogard, set the bar very high in terms of appearing at events, and I'm convinced he was cloned because I can't maintain the pace. But one of the things I am struck with is the longevity of a lot of these nonprofits. In the past couple of weeks, I've been asked to help celebrate. I mean, we have this one, it's 20 years. 20 years is a blink of an eye. We've got organizations in this town that I've been asked to participate in events for that are celebrating their 95th, their 100th, and their 150th. That's a sesquicentennial observation. It's stunning, and really makes me think about what accounts for the ability of these organizations to sustain themselves so long in our city. And I think there are historical explanations for it. It's an affluent community. It is a community that has traditions of philanthropy. We have a strong church and religious presence, which contributes to that. We got lots of city commissions that help groom people and get them engaged in city stuff. But going forward, the real question is, given the changing public attitudes and mores, whether that's really enough. How can we be confident that there will be this ability to do intergenerational handoffs? In fact, while we celebrate these long-term anniversaries, there are lots of organizations that are withering and starting to disappear. And it's kind of sad for those of us that know them. But Pasadena has some answers. You can see where I'm headed with this. I'm almost there. We actually have a nonprofit, Jericho Road, that helps to train other nonprofits. Which is sort of, on the face of it, seems like a pretty obvious idea, but there aren't a lot of those that go around. And of course, we have Leadership Pasadena. Leadership Pasadena has the role of helping to train and inform residents so that they can help continue this proud tradition of civic engagement and support of nonprofits. And so it makes me feel that with the intervention and the continued training activities that this organization provides, that we have a bright future in terms of the nonprofit community in Pasadena. And selfishly, I'm grateful for that, because it means that the city government won't have to go it alone. So I express my gratitude, the city's gratitude, that of the city council and everyone associated with city government, for the really critical role that Leadership Pasadena has played over the past 20 years. And I look forward to celebrating many anniversaries to come. Thank you very much. Most importantly of all, enjoy your lunch.
Please continue to enjoy your lunch as we begin our presentation. The Pasadena community is a better place to live, work, and play because Dr. Sarah Smith Orr and many of you created and delivered Leadership Pasadena 20 years ago. Over the years, over 300 alumni now serve as leaders in our city and regional governments, on nonprofit staffs and boards, as socially responsible business leaders, and as devoted community activists and volunteers. Also, Leadership Pasadena has produced over 50 community service projects that have helped the city improve itself and serve more of its population. As a lot of you know, Sarah Smith Orr is a renowned thought leader and an advisor on community development, community leadership development, and she has been for decades. Her community is beyond Pasadena and beyond California. She serves clients and institutions in Reno and Santa Fe, but also in Colombia, Mexico, Peru, the Philippines, and Afghanistan, and a few other countries. Her bio is included in your program, and I hope you'll take a look at it. She has a very unique perspective, therefore, on leadership across cultures and literally around the world. In addition to her excellence in her leadership career and profession, she is a very respected and beloved family member, a partner, and a friend to many of you in this room. And Leadership Pasadena is very proud to introduce a very remarkable individual, Dr. Sarah Smith Orr.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. I can't tell you what a joy it is to see so many of you that I've known for probably more years than you would like me to state. But it's been really exciting to work on this event, as well as to again, reconnect in a way that has great meaning for me, but for all of you and for the greater community, because this is all about community. And today is going to be a a dialogue about community, but community leadership, and what it is, what it takes, and how we can better prepare our leaders here and beyond for the leadership roles that they need to serve in as they help to develop a stronger sense of community. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. But first, I wanted to also just comment on the fact that she put me first in terms of Leadership Pasadena, but the reality is, as you know, and as you saw everyone stand up, there were many, many people involved in this. I would like to call out a couple of people, two people, as a matter of fact, in addition to those that I worked with on this event, the honorary committee, who you already met, Phil Hockey and Deb Raup, who've been wonderful partners. Cindy has been awesome in the kind of leadership and support that she's provided. But the other two I'd like to have stand up and just us acknowledge for their roles. And one is Greg Apodaca. Greg... When I asked Greg to serve on the honorary committee, he said, boy, I remember that breakfast. And I remember, too, I think it was Marston's, wasn't it? And we were sitting at breakfast, and he said, I really want to do something different. I'm involved in a community kind of project in L.A., but I want to do something in Pasadena. And I said, well, you ought to be starting Leadership Pasadena. And I had been involved in the launch and founding executive director of Leadership California. So I came with a few credentials as well as other leadership organizations that I created in other states, Texas and Pennsylvania for two anyway. But Greg is the one who had the passion, the vision to push many of us over the cliff, if you will, to jump into this and make it happen. So I just want to acknowledge Greg and his vision and his sustained involvement in a way that has provided leadership and strength to Leadership Pasadena. So thank you, Greg. The other person I'd like to recognize, and he was a silent partner, is Paul Vandeventer. And Paul is going to be on the panel, but if it hadn't been for community partners and for Paul believing in us and helping us through some undulations in our work, then you wouldn't be here today to celebrate the 20th anniversary. So, Paul, thank you very much. You weren't on the honorary committee, but thank you. If you don't know, this is a marketing thing. If you don't know about community partners, you must learn, because he has been and his organization have been instrumental for over 20 years in helping develop community-based organizations and helping them thrive, not only through their incubator support, but as they've moved on. So I thank you again, Paul, for saving our buns. So as I said, my focus is going to be on community leadership. It's not going to be about Leadership 101. It's not going to be about issues that you may be facing and addressing in the Pasadena community, but I want to, with the panel, take a higher view of what it is. What is community? What does it take to create this spirit of community that helps to raise everyone to a higher level of performance in their lives, whether it's economic, it's social, it's health, whatever the measure is, it's raising everyone. So I wanted to, when I was thinking about doing this last week, and I thought about it a lot longer, but last week, and I picked up the Santa Fe New Mexican. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I picked up the Santa Fe New Mexican, flipped to the opinion page, and coincidentally, two op-ed pieces were on the page that really dealt with what we're talking about today. One was titled The America I Love. And the writer described examples of what it feels to her as the tearing of the social fabric of our country. And she was lamenting what was happening and the more toxic rhetoric and where is that spirit of community that we all appreciate and benefit from. The other was, just as a segue to it, was our chances for community keep fading. And this individual was using technology as the culprit, if you will, for the fading of community. And at the end said, you know, we're losing that sense of community, that sense of shared responsibility, humanity, and yes, togetherness. So I have felt that. And when I was asked by Phil and Deb to be the honorary chair, which was humbling to say the least, I was thinking about these things. And when I then extended the invitation to the honorary committee members, I went back to one of my favorite authors and champions in various roles in his life, John W. Gardner. And his book is entitled Leadership and on Leadership. And I wanted to read to you what I sent to the honorary committee members as a way of enticing them to say yes. And as Gardner says, that in some measure, what we think of as a failure of leadership in the contemporary scene may be traceable to a breakdown in the sense of community. So the way I took that and the way I would paraphrase it is basically the strength of our nation resides in the strength of our communities. So that's the focus and where I want to go. So these are communities where leaders build on shared values, where the fabric of the community is strengthened by the knitting together of diverse opinions, diverse ideas, diverse segments to reach common goals, where conflicts are resolved through coalitions that are building across sectors, across organizations, across groups and entities in the community, where the focus is on assets, not deficits. For so many years, we've focused on communities where there are deficits, and we define them as deficits, rather than building up from the community, engaging the community in a positive way with their assets, using and engaging their assets to make community better. And where mutually workable solutions are sought through system-changing concepts and initiatives. So what's system changing? Well, as it's been defined by the Collective Impact Group, it's a Collective Impact Forum, system change has been defined as, and listen to the words, shifting the conditions that hold a problem in place. So it's not the problem, it's shifting the conditions that hold the problem in place. So let me give you a couple of examples. I've been honored, as Cindy pointed out, to work with people in different countries. And they're dealing with what has been thought to be intractable situations, where poverty is beyond our really understanding because poverty is so significant. And I'm going to focus on two social entrepreneurs. One, both of them living in the U.S. and working in different areas. One is a graduate. She did her bachelor's degree at Claremont McKenna College, was involved in social change activities and in leadership through the Kravis Leadership Institute, went on to Harvard to become part of a design group, an architectural design group, looking at how do you build communities, but not just infrastructure. It's the economic part of it. It's the social part of it. Her name is Chelina Adbert, and her organization is County Design Initiative. And I'll have you look up County so you can know what that means. But it's a nonprofit design and community development organization, and they partner, not take over, not control, but partner with under-resourced communities. And I love the definition, under-resourced, to advance equity and activate the unrealized potential, that's the assets, in the neighborhoods and cities. They're working around the world, in Africa, in the US, in LA, Coachella, in places where people are living in situations that all it requires is helping them to bring to fore their energies, their insights, and their creativity to make a change. The other person that I wanted to point out is described as Oscar Romo. He's a Jesuit, but his focus was in environmental research, was working on a project in Mexico, in Tijuana, Mexico, to look at where this waste from Tijuana was flowing into the estuaries in the San Diego area, and looking to prevent that, to change that, and change behaviors. Well, he described I interviewed all these people, by the way, and met with them, and some of them I work with. He said he created this nonprofit, and he thought he'd bring together the environment and funding, and that would work. Well, it didn't work. He tried traditional ways of engaging government and local authorities. Didn't work because they wanted money. And then what he decided was, well, gee, maybe I need to talk to the community. And so he began working with the community. And when he realized that the real needs were not in helping others, but in helping them to see how they could help themselves. So when they saw that the trash and sediment affected them as well as what was going into the U.S., they came into action. They ended up solving the problems, actually creating a manufacturing plant to use some of the products that could be reused, and the problem was over. So, excuse me. In each one of these cases, and the work of both, and the people that I've worked with, the community members were heard, engaged, took responsibility for the changes they wished to make in their communities. And a variety of systemic changes occurred as a result. So what are the basic principles? And then I'm going to move on to getting our panel involved. Community-led planning is a key to sustainable and equitable change. Co-producing knowledge, that is, working with others to produce the knowledge about what it could be as well as what could be done to catalyze the social change. And that community voices are crucial to advancing equity and systems change. So quickly, Peter Block in his book Community, The Structure of Belonging describes community. Community offers the promise of belonging and calls for us to acknowledge our interdependence, to improve the common measures of community health, economy, education, health, safety, the environment. We need to create a community where each citizen has the experience of being connected to those around them and knows that their safety and success are dependent upon the success of all others. The essence of creating an alternative future comes from citizen-to-citizen engagement that focuses at each step on the well-being of the whole. It's a wonderful book if you want to get up on communities and how to work in communities. So when I talked to Phil Hockey, now many months ago it seems, I said I don't want to be the deal here. I will set the stage. I would like to engage 4 other people to work with me and to have dialogue with me. Not as talking heads, but to have a dialogue about a set of questions that I've provided them in advance as a result of their feedback to me about what are the things they could contribute to our dialogue. So I'm going to run through questions. I have 5 questions that I've asked them to focus on. So what I'd like to do is ask them now to move to the seats, and I will introduce them as they, and then I'm going to move over there and flip my lavalier mic on. Each one of them has been groundbreaking in the various life and professional roles, and all care about leadership and equipping those in our communities with the necessary skills. Each brings a different perspective, the convergence of which provides a robust vision of leadership. And I hope you'll walk away feeling you have a robust vision. And I will, now that they're all set and they're getting their mics on, I will start introducing them. I'd first like to introduce, in the center is Dr. Jean Lipman-Blumen, an academic colleague, teacher, and mentor friend. And by the way, you have their bios in your programs. I'm not doing the bio thing. I'm just doing 5 sentences on each, okay? She is recognized globally for her research, extensive knowledge, and writing about leaders, highly effective ones, and toxic ones. The range of her professional experience has been extensive, with leadership in every position that she has held, including the founding and co-founding of 2 leadership institutes. She has student followers, and I've seen many of them, including in China, from all over the world. She frequently asks the question, however, leadership for what, if not for peace? And part of building community is about building for peace. So I'd like to introduce now Dr. I'm gonna screw up her name, and I know her so well, but Phlunte Riddle. Aha, I didn't do too badly. She's been a first in most of her life endeavors. She was in our first LP class. She broke barriers for the nearly 29 years she spent rising through the ranks at the Pasadena Police Department. And this is my way of describing her, developing street smarts and honing her leadership skills along the way. After retiring, quote unquote, she advanced her career by completing a doctorate and establishing her consulting business. Her leadership focus includes emotional intelligence, which she considers the foundation for all leaders, but especially community leaders. You've seen Deacon Manuel of Valencia. He was an early supporter of Leadership Pasadena, providing pro bono communications and outreach support through his business. He comes to us well-equipped with his background in journalism, government and politics, and corporate communications. As our invocator this afternoon, we witness another side of this multifaceted man, an ordained deacon who continues his growth through a master's program at Loyola Marymount University. And finally, I introduced earlier Paul Vandeventer, but he deserves more of an introduction, founder, CEO, and I would call him a distinguished community leader. A visionary sought after expert on nonprofit leadership and management, Paul and community partners, which he co-founded, served a critical role in Leadership Pasadena's beginnings, as I noted. He is committed to building community-based organizations and civic engagement, which he will speak to, as vital elements of our nation's democratic system. He is a resource to countless organizations, including foundations, and an active convener of cross-sector leaders for issues requiring broad-based perspectives and action. So thank you. I'm moving across the room. All right. Yes, I got it on, don't I? Yes. I'll hold this. So thank you very much, each one of you, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm really excited about what we can focus on today. And the first question that I have, and I'd like to start with Jean, as we think about the decades of, the last 2 decades, and Jean has written about and studied the decades or the eras of leadership, so she knows well how to capture what's been happening. So I'd like you to speak to how has leadership and the environment for leadership changed in, let's say, the last 2 decades, and taking a more global view of that question.
Okay. Well, I think that it's obvious to every person in this room that the conditions of leadership have changed in the last 2 decades from what I would call a geopolitical orientation, where nations were defined in terms of political ideology and their geography, their proximity or their distance from other nations, to one in which we are looking at individuals, organizations, larger entities that are connected and who are very, very diverse, who are very heterogeneous, let me say it that way, but they are made interdependent in large part by technology. We can't escape it. And as Sarah mentioned before, I keep asking, leadership for what? I think probably everybody in this room has seen the dishwashing ad where the little girl talks about her mother washing the dishes, and then she says, but what does the dishwasher do? And I would say, but what does the leader do? And I think at every single level of leadership are engaged, leaders should be engaged in the same issue. They should be identifying a noble enterprise for their organization or their group to reach for. And I think everybody sitting in this room, all of the organizations, and certainly Leadership Pasadena, all of you have been involved in noble enterprises. And it gives the people with whom you work a way of finding meaning in their own lives. Let me add, can't escape this professorial role, I guess.
Okay, but I'm going to shut her off in about 45 seconds.
I'm going to shut up in 35 seconds. But Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I'd add People's Search for Meaning. And it's the idea that we are all searching for some noble enterprise to which we can connect our lives and derive meaning from it. So that's what we do at the Connective Leadership Institute. We try to train people in a new model of leadership called connective leadership.
Thank you, Jean. I wanted to ask Paul then, from a regional kind of perspective, what have you seen as changes that will and are impacting communities in that sense of community that I spoke about?
Two things that I've seen, but before I say those things, I want to say, Sarah could have, at Phil's invitation, made this all about herself, but it is a characteristic of a fine, experienced, and confident leader to turn over that opportunity to other people, to remake the situation in a way that she believed would serve best the people in the room. And I want to applaud you for doing that. Okay. You could have made this different, and you chose to make it this way. And look how you filled the room. So two things from a regional, national standpoint. We've devalued politics in a horrific way, I think, to the point where for the last 30 or so years, the distrust in the permanent institutions of government, the institutions that are not going away, that we rely on and our tax dollars fund, have become objects of suspicion. That's problematic. And that draws on all of us to figure out, how do we restore or remake government in a way that it serves the real needs of people and doesn't cut us off from one another?
Manuel, you've got an idea about that.
Yes, and I have to begin by saying that unlike so many who, when they hear the word politician, they use it with a tone of derision and ridicule. I see the call to the political life as a very noble calling. Certainly in my experience, all these politicians, and I use that in a positive way, of course, I see these men and women, for the most part, really doing their best to bring people together. And I know that, in the Pasadena area, we do have bragging rights. With Chris Holden, Judy Chu, that's just, Adam Schiff. And I'm just reaching out. These are good people, and they are attempting to do something good. I think the problem lies more, as you said earlier, Sarah, within the community. And as Jean said also, we are fragmented. There is the politics of identity. There is all of this going on. There is the technology that has made everything faster, which has really impacted politics. And that in turn has meant that everything is now more open, more suspect. In fact, all of our institutions are under suspicion. Education, law enforcement, Congress, everything. We live in a postmodern society in which we suspect everything and in which everything is fragmented. What we need are organizations like Leadership Pasadena, where at the grassroots level, we begin to support our politicians. Our politicians, in turn, need to know that they must lead by example, bringing people together in a collaborative manner to be able to show that there is no quick fix, even though the internet may say so. There is none. Yeah. And that we need patience and a long-term view of what we are going to be doing.
Perfect. And Phlunte, I wanted you to comment as well because of your street smarts and what you see happening more in the local community.
So I will share that he's absolutely right. We become what we call millennials, no disrespecting millennials in the room, is the microwave generation. We want answers now. I currently consult with Assemblymember Chris Holden, and I will share with you that we all come to the table regardless of what the issue is. I'll use climate change and fossil fuel, but there are people that around the same cause can have such different methods on how they want to get there that they become infighting and become threats and we become stale in how we look at one common cause is to reduce the impact on our climate. And so when you're in a local community, I've been in Pasadena, Altadena my whole life. I will share that we do it here. We want to get to an end result, but how we get there, that process is going to be different. And we have to have enough patience with one another, enough belief that we're coming in a shared manner to get to an end result. And the conflict is not a bad word, but it's how you manage that conflict. And so emotional intelligence, knowing yourself, being self-aware of your triggers and how what you say impacts someone else. Because looking at politics in itself, sometimes from the political world, you can say something to a group of people, even though you may believe in their cause, but it's the how you say it. I'll go back to my mother, who gets in my head all the time. She used to say, literally, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and it's about how you make people feel. And so if you have individuals that make people feel as though their voice doesn't matter, that's an impact on leadership.
That's it. So you provided a wonderful segue to the next question I have. And I'm actually going to combine two because I'm thinking about time. And that's, how do these changes affect the type of leaders we must become? As Block described it, each citizen has the experience of being connected to those around them, creating an alternative future. So as we think about that question, I want to also go on and say, what are the characteristics? What are the kind of behaviors that we would like to see in addition to emotional intelligence, for example, in addition to what you said, Manuel, about engaging with political leaders, what do we need to see in terms of behaviors and characteristics in our leaders? I'm going to start with you, Paul.
One of the things that occurred to me as we were preparing, and we are well prepared. We read articles, we did homework, we sent homework into the teacher, it came back with a grade on it, okay? It's okay. One of the dangers of leaders today is they so much devolves to civil society to kind of absorb the tensions and be the safety valve for society today, is we end up in bubbles. And I would argue, and I can prove it in a second to you, that this is a bubble. And what we have to do as the folks who gravitate to bubbles like this is punch our way out from the inside. We are insiders in politics, in civic life, in our social spheres, in our institutions. How do we punch the bubble from the inside and get outside of it and hear those community voices? I think that's one of the most difficult things. Let me do a quick proof. How many of you have ever started an organization or organized people to start an organization? Okay, let me tell you something. There is a group in Los Angeles County right now that is 7% of the population. We know this because we've surveyed it 2 years in a row. 7% of the population has done those things. Okay? 49% of the population has been active in some way, and the other half of the population not active at all in civic life. We know it, it's statistically valid, that 7% of 10 million people in Los Angeles. Now, why do I call it the mighty slice? Because that's an army. Do you know what 7% of the above 18 age population is in Los Angeles County? It's right around 500,000 to 600,000 people. That's a lot of folks who we need to give contact points in the civic sector, Leadership Pasadena type experiences, Coro type experiences. I'm looking at one of my Coro pals over there, Ken Chalkins, and where we have the opportunity to share a common experience, sometimes over a period of time, and carry that experience with us for life. Everybody here who's been through the program knows that you get a reference point quickly from the relationship you had and from the difficulties you encountered. And I think that's one of the great secrets is we want to create bubbles, but we also want to create people who recognize that being in the bubble is not the aim. Getting outside of it and using the power that comes of knowing where the bubble is for the benefit of people.
And that really is about systems change.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's changing what it is that's affecting that particular issue.
Being mindful of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What else would you like to add?
We're all caught up in our own individual systems, through our work, through our families, through our religious institutions. And so I think it means, and it goes back to your invocation, it goes back to what you were talking about emotional intelligence, having leaders who see the commonalities that the individuals or the groups themselves don't see, who think they have groups or individuals who think and may have conflicting agendas over a variety of issues. But a connective leader is somebody who sees maybe that very small beginning sweet spot where people can come together and develop a sense of confidence and safety that we can work together. If we work together on this, well, maybe we could work together on something bigger and more relevant than this.
Comments?
I'd like to kind of put a face on what, some skin on what we've just heard, because it brings to mind many years ago, when the Gold Line was then just a dream, and it was called the Blue Line. And we could not get anyone together to agree to build public transit that was going to really be for the common good in so many ways. We had Pasadena with its interests. South Pasadena, well, that's another story. Highland Park, Chinatown, downtown. And our company was, we were representing the city of Pasadena, and I remember very clearly, Cynthia Kurt said, we need to do something about this. We need to break all of these little groups with their own little interests and not looking at the broader picture. And so she suggested that, and I don't know if you remember, Cynthia, wherever you are, that we have coffee clutches and breakfast. Let's get people together in their communities to talk about what is going on, why we need this. Let's get the public transit people in downtown, which everyone suspected, and for good reason, I might add, to see what we can do to come together. And it was because of that one stroke of insight. Bring people together, break bread, have them sit down, not in any bureaucratic fashion, but just to sit down and speak informally. And with all of that, and through the good work of then Assemblyman Adam Schiff, we were able to really move that forward. But it was because of the vision of Cynthia, and it was the leadership of Pasadena that made it happen throughout the entire Gold Line. That's how it works.
That's great. And that is something that Peter Block has as a foundational piece of building community. And that's conversations, not around a particular issue at first. It's the conversations that need to happen, out of which bubbles up some of the things that need to be changed, as well as the assets that that community brings in terms of helping to affect that change.
But I think that's where leadership really comes in, that the leader can create safe conditions for those initial interactions so that you build confidence and you feel a sense of safety about reaching out and working with people who are have different goals, have different methodologies. But I think we would be remiss indeed if we didn't think about the role of technology in bringing us together and how we can use that to get out of our bubbles, and the way in which it can entrap us, because it can be used for good or for not so good.
I would argue that conflict of interests and the unsafeness that you feel in that space is actually healthy as well. And I'm thinking about our universities preparing young people these days for leadership in the world, and so much debate going on about safe spaces, about what's safe to say, what's going to trigger somebody in one way or another. And while I want to be sensitive to everybody's individual needs, you got to have conflict. You got to be bred in conflict in order to lead well, I believe.
But that's not, as I said earlier, conflict's not negative, is how it's managed. And so I'll take a little different twist on, the leadership role. We singled out Cynthia, and rightfully so, but everyone in this room is a leader. Everyone in this room is a stakeholder, and they bring significance to the issue at hand. And even though they may not have the influence or the power that her office allowed, you still have to know that it's imperative that you bring your ideas to the table. We're stronger, and that's the interdependence. We're stronger if we all come to the table. The other key that I will say, which is the elephant in the room, is how the workforce is changing, be it nonprofit or if it's an organized, structured environment, such as the city of Pasadena in the sense of the working structure. And that is, you have a large influx of millennials who are 78 million coming to a door, if they're not there already, near you with a lot of school debt. And, and they are making an impact because they don't believe in the hierarchy that baby boomers came up with. And so they're pushing back. And so one of the things that is going to happen, whether you work through it as a leader or you just age out, is that there's a different style of leadership coming. This is real. And I say manage it. Help mentor them. In a hierarchy environment where you never talk or you never see the boss, you don't know how your assignment impacts the outcome. And so what's the fear in sharing it and giving the information so everyone knows that they're working for a common cause, that what you are saying as, I need you to do X, how do you know that X and B even connect? So that's the leader's responsibility.
Well, then what I'm thinking about, let me back up and say, the people that I've worked with as social entrepreneurs in different parts of the world, there were several common denominators. One is they used themselves as an instrument, not as somebody who knew it all. They were able to provide the kinds of connections. If they didn't know them, they found out about them, where the resources were, where are the people that need to be a part of this problem-solving activity, how they entrusted others, the community, to really take control of their situation by sharing knowledge, by sharing, if you will, the infrastructure that they needed. The other part is they were so skilled at developing relationships. They were relational in every way, whether it was collaborating, whether they were contributing to other people's success, whether they were mentoring others so that they would succeed. It wasn't about a competitive environment. It wasn't about I. It's always about we. Everything that they were able to accomplish. And my study was about people who had already been recognized at an international level for the work they were doing. So as we conclude, how do you then, as you think about Leadership Pasadena, think about what we've had our dialogue about, what should the role of Leadership Pasadena be moving forward as it continues its outreach and engagement of individuals who want to make a difference in the community? Ta-da!
I'm thinking of a young person walking into a room like this. They grew up in Pasadena. They want to figure out how to get engaged. And what I would encourage that young person to do is pick up 10 business cards from this. Make it a goal to pick up 10 business cards and begin building a network. That way, if they're curious and have a certain awe about the scale and complexity of a community, they can then draw on those people to explain the community to them from their vantage point. And those young people can begin to adapt their civic reach to what that community looks like. Everybody at my office, there are 45 core staff and 800 employees, has an assignment. And the assignment is build your civic reach and build this organization's civic reach as part of your job. And let's keep talking about it. We have moved from starting just civil society-based organizations to working in edge innovations with governments. We're working with the County of Los Angeles, the City of Long Beach, the City of Los Angeles on helping government innovate. Where government is great is bureaucracy and building big systems. But where they're not great is innovating. And so they use us in some instances as an edge innovator. When they want to invest in a trial project, they'll come through community partners, and we'll work with the county on cannabis regulation and mental health services and health services and so on.
Cool.
But civic reach, I think, is a really critical aspect.
Well, I'm not an expert on Leadership Pasadena, but I think everybody who is here, who is connected to that organization, is a leader in many other spheres as well. And we have to think about how do we have to behave differently as leaders as the world conditions change, and that the Connective Leadership Institute, where I am now, that's what we try to do. And when I hear you talking about the underlying behaviors, are you competitive? Are you social? Are you collaborative? Are you contributory? What kind of behavior is required in this particular situation to bring people together and connect to some noble enterprise? Because I think everybody in this room would want to feel, and I suspect most of, if not all of you do feel, you are connected to a noble enterprise. You're changing the world. You're making it a better place. On the Connective Leadership website, there's a peace plan. And I invite you all, it's an open source peace plan. I invite you all to go to that site and change it. Add your ideas. And we're going to talk about this at a Connective Leadership seminar October 7th through 10th at the University Club in Pasadena. And not all of you are invited because we can't fit you in the room, but we'd love to see some of you there.
Thank you, Jean.
What should Leadership Pasadena be doing or teaching? I think two principles. Number one, and this is the genius of the Jews, tikkun olam. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. And that is, learn to embrace the concept of healing the world. Because that's what wherever you find it, and however you find it. At home, in the community more broadly, but that is a very worthy and noble mission, to heal the world. That's number one. Number two, that every leader must learn to treat one another with dignity, with respect, and with worth. If we do that, I promise you, we will have good leaders.
I would say break out of this bubble. As I look across this room, very few, I look about the diversity in race. There's some people missing. And so, or there's a small number. And so I would say that just a little bit of difference on my colleagues' take on it is don't wait for people to come contact you. I think about myself way back when as a young person. You are intimidating, if only by your status. And so I would not expect someone to come and ask me for my business card. I've gone up to a couple of individuals in the community and I said, I'd like to mentor you. I see them at a function, I hear them speak, and I'm like, I'd like to mentor you. You know, and that means I have to make time. And yes, my husband says I don't know how to find retirement, but I believe that it's imperative that we bring along the next generation because we're frustrated, but we created our own frustration. Because I grew up in a very hierarchy environment doesn't mean that the next generation, which I've already told you they're coming, they're here, they're going to appreciate that. We assume because we're in this room that we share a common value, and that's in being involved or wanting to learn more about leadership, but we don't all come from the same space. And so there are individuals that I think could be very valuable to Leadership Pasadena, but how do you outreach to them and how do they afford it? And that is a key, the affordability, because I've suggested people to the executive staff, but they can't get through the door. And it would be beneficial. Sometimes you bring people on not because of what they can do for you, but what literally they can bring to your table.
That's right. That's right.
Can I
Thank you.
One just small note. In that vein, affordability. I know that the purpose of this luncheon is to raise funds.
Scholarships.
For scholarships. And what I'd like to do on behalf of this panel, in honor of Sarah, is extend a $1,000 contribution from community partners to that fund.
Wow. That's great. Yay.
And anybody who wants to match it can.
Thank you so much. You all were just fabulous. And they will be here for a little while. If any one of you has questions of them or would like to have a conversation, please do come up and talk with them later. And after we're finished, and then I need to scoot over there, and I need Deb and Phil. Where are you?
And Josh.
And Josh, please.
And if the panelists would just stay seated. I want to thank Jean and Paul and Manuel and Phlunte and Sarah. And what a great segue. Okay, I can skip a few remarks because what I was going to say was that clearly effective community leadership requires in-depth training and a strong commitment. And Leadership Pasadena does not want personal finances to be a barrier to people who want to serve and lead in the Pasadena community. And therefore, I would like to invite LP alum, former board member, Tridi Parambi, to tell you about our new scholarship fund. Tridi is the Director of Communications here at Caltech for about 3 more days. She has accepted a new job as the Communications Officer for the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation Palo Alto, and we appreciate her spending one of her last days at Caltech with us. Tridi?
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be actually representing one of my science communication colleagues, Dr. Gordon Squires, and his amazing partner, Kendra Nita. They have been supporting Leadership Pasadena for 11 years. They're one of the most generous supporters of Leadership Pasadena. And their vision is, if we can train emerging leaders in the same environment as accomplished leaders, then we can impact all the areas that those leaders are passionate about. So instead of putting their money into one issue or one area that they're passionate about, they want to train, they want to support this training environment. And we've heard it over and over again in this panel, right? How do we put emerging and accomplished leaders together to truly change the world? So they've been doing this for 11 years, and the board of Leadership Pasadena has decided to name a scholarship in their honor. Please pick up this in your packets. On the back, you'll be able to read it. In honor of LP alumni and generous supporter, Dr. Gordon Squires, who also happens to be an astrophysicist, he's amazing, and his family, the Look to the Stars Scholarship Fund will assume financial access to Leadership Pasadena to motivated individuals throughout the Pasadena community. I encourage you to go online and support this fund. I was so touched to hear another generous offer today. So please support this program, because by bringing leaders together, we can truly change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tridi, and thank you, Tridi, and thank you, Paul. There are 3 of us that would like to give recognition to Cindy. Anybody who's worked with Cindy knows that, 1, she doesn't sleep, and 1, she assumes other people don't sleep like me, and because we get communications at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I actually read them and respond. So Phil and Deb and Josh and I got together to get something for Cindy, and I'm going to, yay, there you go.
Where's Cindy?
Take it out of the paw.
One aspect of leadership is high energy and positive attitude and working hard. And that's what Cindy does. The success of this event demonstrates that. The success of Leadership Pasadena demonstrates that. And we want to recognize that with a little gift.
And so let me read it. I think I can read it. So Cindy's name is on it. Your tireless commitment, deep dedication to community, and your leadership inspire us all. In gratitude, Leadership Pasadena, September 2019. Thank you.
And if you're wondering if Cindy is deserving, she looked at me when she was receiving that award and said, "This is not on the agenda."
It's like, no kidding.
Again, thank you everybody for coming. Last thing in your packet, we'd like to make sure that you're invited to our Setting the Table event, which is happening on November 9th in Pasadena. More information there. That's a big event for Leadership Pasadena. It's also going to be this year with the Junior League, which is a great opportunity for this organization. So we're very excited about that. Please continue to mix and mingle. We'll be here until about 2 p.m. Definitely speak to others here, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
First of all, Steve, it's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. It's a real pleasure to see you again. You know, you were the first corporate leader to support the idea of a Leadership Pasadena program here in the 1990s. So how did you hear about Leadership Pasadena, and what interested you at that time then?
So, Anton, I, as having worked at Huntington Hospital for many years, I saw the importance of the community, the engagement. Phil Hockey, who had come to us from Cincinnati, had experienced a leadership program there in Cincinnati, and really felt strongly as city manager, there was something that could really value this community and move us to the next phase, if you will.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was good.
Now, leadership models on the national level, as well as here in Pasadena, have changed a lot in the past 20 years since we started all of this. So do you feel like a program like Leadership Pasadena is still relevant, and why?
Yeah, I think Pasadena Leadership and all the leadership programs in Pasadena are critical, and probably more critical than they were 20 years ago, to be honest with you. I'd come off as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and we'd had some issues with, change, people not wanting to recognize some of the challenges we had. And I think that same kind of things are existent today, and perhaps even more so with the generation that we have coming up as leaders, the complexities of technology, global environment, and I think maintaining what I've always felt, maintaining the success of Pasadena is very dependent on community members and leaders being involved in making sure we're moving in the right direction.
So Steve, lastly, you and vis-a-vis Huntington Hospital have been a major supporter of Leadership Pasadena's new community leadership program for military vets. It's a terrific program. Do you see an untapped pool of future community and civic leaders in the many veterans returning here to the San Gabriel Valley area?
I do. One of my early interests in that was we had so many people that worked at the hospital, physicians, nurses, you name it, that were coming out of the military. And yet they were looking for how can they get involved. And they had come from a very hierarchical, structured kind of environment, the military. In today's world, it's different. And I think we need to see folks from the military who have great strengths, have served our country, and take over these leadership roles and feel comfortable doing it in an environment that isn't necessarily as structured as they had seen in the military. Right. So yes, I'm a big believer and I'm a big supporter of the military being engaged and specifically helping them in programs like Pasadena Leadership.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful supporter for all these years. It's
thank you.
Always a pleasure for me to get a chance to see you.
Nice to see you again, Anton.
And thank you so much for all your help.
Great, thank you. Right. Bye-bye.
The story, another story goes that that at first you weren't sure whether Leadership Pasadena was right for city employees, and whether or not city employees should participate. But you've changed your mind. And now LP has had people from all sorts of different departments be involved and participate and take leadership positions of their own. First of all, is that a true story? And then also, tell us what helped change your mind.
sometimes you wish stories would die, but that one didn't. And yes, there is a lot of truth to that story. When Pasadena Leadership first started, I was not the city manager. Phil Hockey was the city manager, and he was very much engaged and involved in it. I was the public works director, and the request came to me about whether employees from the Public Works Department would be interested and be good candidates for Leadership Pasadena. As it was first described to me, I thought it was a training ground for future city council people or city commissioners, because that was my perspective of community leadership. I immediately thought, we'd be setting our employees up, because the council would look at them and say, you're going to run against me, or you want to take my place on the Planning Commission. And I was concerned that maybe it wasn't the right thing. Fortunately, I got a much better understanding of the organization, that it's about building community, it's about being leaders in every part of what a community represents, and was glad to always include at least 2 people from that department. When I became the city manager, I made sure that we moved it around, that every department got to participate. And I was fortunate enough as city manager to even be part of some of the training programs, and they are some of the most memorable experiences of being the manager in this city.
Fantastic. And now you've been like a top executive of some of the largest and most powerful governmental, civic, and nonprofit organizations here in LA County. Did any of the panelists today strike a chord with you in terms of something you've done successfully or found challenging in your life, in your career?
I thought the panelists were incredible today, and so much of what they talked about rings true when you look back over things that you've done maybe not as well as you wish you had. Right. Becoming a leader is a lifetime experience. It never stops where you can say, I know all about being a leader. And I think the panel really exemplified that. But I thought the discussion about millennials and how leadership is changing, and they all touched on it a bit. Being a leader is not the same as it was 20 years ago. You're not expected to do the same thing. You're not expected to represent that position the same way. And I think that with millennials now not just joining the workforce, but moving into management and leadership positions throughout all the sectors in a community, we're seeing that the very way leaders operate needs to change dramatically. They are no longer part of a hierarchy or a structure. And when I even say moving into, that's not exactly the way millennials think of it. They see everyone equally participating in decision making, and there's some very good parts of that group decision making that I hope rings true for a long time.
And what changes have you specifically tried to implement?
I worked for a nonprofit called River LA, and I also worked for a nonprofit called San Gabriel Valley Economic Partnership. And in both of those, we looked at more collaborative decision-making techniques and abilities, not just within our own organization and how we made decisions, but with partner organizations and how you work together towards shared goals. And you really find a better sense of satisfaction, I believe, because it does take a lot of the conflict out of an issue, but I think you make better decisions. One of the things that when I worked in City Hall here in Pasadena, one of the things that people used to complain about is our processes and how long it took to get anything done. And I would always defend those processes by saying, I realize that. A lot of people touch every decision. And it is very frustrating to both decision makers and to people who are waiting for decisions. But I will absolutely stand by our decisions are better because we allow so much collaborative decision making in Pasadena.
So do you think that civil discourse, respectful debate, and yes, even disagreement or conflict are still valued and even desired here?
Yes, I think they are. Respectful conflict is a good thing, but it means that you need to be a great listener and you need to respect the people that you are working with. Unfortunately, I think a lot of our debate today is not respectful. It is people taking sides, people arguing to try and get people to listen to them and change their mind. And that's not always a positive way to have a good outcome.
It is such a pleasure to meet you. Heard so many great things about you. You've got an incredible legacy here in Pasadena. So
it only means I'm old, Anton.
It is my pleasure to have a chance to have a brief conversation with you. You know, you were one of the founding team that created Leadership Pasadena 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So what made you think Leadership Pasadena and that would be a benefit to the area?
Well, Pasadena is an activist community, and there are a lot of people here who are engaged already, civically, socially engaged around a myriad of issues. Having an organization like Leadership Pasadena that helps connect people to other resources in the community, to help them to develop the leadership skills essential to bring the community together and to foster searching for a word now, synergy. Foster the synergy that's necessary to get things done in the community. That's what really made me think this would really work. And of course, Greg Apodaca is very influential, and he's convincing.
Yes, he is. You know, Ibrahim, a lot of things have changed since 1999 when it was all founded. Mm-hmm. Is LP still valuable to Pasadena? And what role do you think it should play in the life of the city now?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's valuable because Pasadena is, like I said, an activist community. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of issues. Anytime a community can have leadership, a good solid foundation and basis of leadership, it will excel. Leadership is essential in everything we do. Any endeavor has to have adequate leadership to propel that, to set vision, to organize, and to motivate people toward a common objective. And so the more people we have who have developed these skill sets, who have these connections, it makes for a more dynamic community.
I agree, absolutely. Do you think Pasadena could actually thrive as a robust city without a program like LP to rise up future community leaders?
Well, I would say this. It certainly couldn't thrive without it as much as it can with it. You know, I look at leaders as like nodes in terms of computer vision. And so every point of contact that we have that can process information, connect people to needed resources, inspire people, disseminate information, that's what those leaders are. And so the more nodes we have in our community, the more connected the community, the more dynamic the community, and I think Pasadena benefits from that every time.
Fantastic. Well, to use a bad computer metaphor, thank you for helping boot it all up.
All righty.
Thank you so much for everything you've done, and appreciate all of your leadership.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to more work from you too.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again.
Sure thing.
Josh, you're doing great things. You know, it's wonderful that you're, chair of the board of Leadership Pasadena. So I already know you're a busy man, and thank you so much for stepping into that leadership role of Leadership Pasadena. Do you think community leaders can be developed through a program like LP, or do you think some people are just kind of born with it or not born with it?
Well, that's a good question. I think leaders can be absolutely developed. I don't know that anybody's born with the skills necessary to be a leader today. I think there's people with natural tendencies towards maybe being a leader, but even those that have that tendency need to have the skills honed. And I think that's what Leadership Pasadena does. It gives you the ability to take what might be raw talent as a leader and actually focus it so that you can use it for good either in your community or your organization or school or whatever. Yeah.
Fantastic. In what way should LP influence the nature and lifestyle of the Pasadena community?
Well, I think LP has a real duty and a challenge, and this Pasadena is a wonderful community filled with a lot of organizations and a lot of talented people. LP has its job cut out for it to stand out, but I think what it can do, and it's been doing, is training that next level of leader. right? Because for Pasadena to continue to be a vibrant city like it is, it has to have the next generation. And that's really what Leadership Pasadena has always been about, and it's what today's program was about, and it's continues to be the core of our curriculum and our program.
Absolutely. So the core program, the core Leadership Pasadena program, costs $4,500 for the 8-month course. The program is obviously worth it. You and I both know that. But many emerging and existing community leaders can't afford it. What options are available for them?
Well, thankfully we do have some options. We have some scholarship options and abilities for them. There are employment opportunities through sponsored employment through Leadership Pasadena, where an employer may pay a portion or all of the tuition for a program if someone works at a job that will allow them to do that. But one of the greatest ways to take advantage of it is look through our leadership, our scholarships. That's what we're here today to do, is to talk about scholarship opportunities and to make the program more available to everybody in the community. So definitely reach out, take a look at the website, apply, and see what we can do to get you in the class.
Well, thank you, Josh, so much.
Of course.
You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
You too.
And thank you again so much for all you do for LP.
Thanks, Anton. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.